inspirational children. And again, I send them lots and lots of love. Look, speaking about things that are just very, how shall we say this, amusing to some people, I've got to say, the situation over in France. You might be familiar with some of the goings on there. President Macron basically threw, I was going to say threw his toys out the pram, but let me just rephrase. He decided to do a bit of a shock election. It really caught people unaware. This was off the back of the results of the European election. He decided to let the French people have their say about what it is they want their country to look like. Well, he probably didn't predict, actually, that Marine Le Pen's party was then going to do what it actually did, because on Sunday, her party, the National Rally, they secured 33% of the vote. This has really sent ructions through a lot of people. It's been called a European earthquake. Of course, you know, the term far right is being thrown out today more times than I've had cups of tea, and I've had a lot of them today. What do you make to it, Daniel Moylan?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to be very careful in saying what is going to happen now in Parliament in France, because these are first-round elections. They have second-round elections next Sunday. And the way in which it works in France, I can't explain it in detail, but they can do deals. And in the past, they've done these deals.
Let's just call them tactical voting, then people kind of know what it's
like tactical voting. They have tactical candidate withdrawals, candidates pulling out and so on, and doing deals across constituencies. And in the past, they've used this mechanism to keep the Marine Le Pen party away from power. The difficulty this time is that she's got so many votes in the first round that it might be difficult for them to do that. Also, there was an astonishingly high turnout. It was a very unusual high turnout election.
66.7%.
Yeah,
that was 47.5% at the last one in 2022.
Yeah, so it's a big turnout, which also has an effect on the way in which the system works, because there are rules about turnout as well. So we can't be absolutely sure what's going to happen, whether she'll be able to, or a nominee, who is this young man called Bardella, will be able to form a government. We don't know that yet. What it is the breaking up in Western Europe, it's been going on for some time, and in Britain, of the sort of technocratic consensus about how we run the country without really having much connection with what people think. And that's breaking up in France in a very dramatic sort of way at the moment. And I think it will have very long-term ructions, whoever forms the government. You're right, Macron is very much a lame duck now.
Sean, what do you think to it?
Have they not got TV or the internet in France? I mean, it defies belief.
What does?
That Macron sees the Prime Minister of the UK being incredibly far behind in the poll for months and months on end, and calling a snap election and finding out that it doesn't get any better at all. It seems really terrible, and he's cruising for an absolute disaster that he could at least have put off for 6 months. Then Macron, does terribly in the European election and thinks, I'll do exactly the same as Rishi Sunak's done in the UK. And sure enough, he's got exactly the same result. I think when it comes to it, as we've heard, we don't know what's going to happen in the second round. My hunch is that the Marine Le Pen probably won't end up forming a government, but clearly she very, very possibly could. And that's never happened before. You say,
you know, are they not watching what happens in other countries, actually? I think there is such a huge amount of political arrogance that goes on with so many people right across the establishment. People throw this terminology around like far-right this, racist that, xenophobic that. They throw it around like confetti. And what they basically mean is if you have the audacity to want control of your borders, if you want the audacity to have defined immigration policies that are actually stuck to, if you don't want your communities and neighbourhoods to change beyond any recognition when you've consistently voted against it, then if you fit into those categories, too many politicians, if you ask me, are calling those people far right. They are attacking them, they are smearing them, and in doing so, they're hoping to silence and suppress them. And what they're actually achieving is the exact opposite, because people have had enough of it now. Before, if you were called far right or whatever, it would be awful. You would think, oh gosh. Many people now, when they're called far right, it almost just makes them laugh, not because they're undermining the genuine far right or they think that's amusing or funny, but because the terminology has become so misused and so ridiculous that the things that it actually is used to describe now are, to many people, sensible policies such as controlling your border.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think it's I think it's been. I think it's true what you say. It's true all over Europe, certainly, and maybe all over the world. I think it's more true in France than it is here. I think it's a problem here. I think there is a tendency for political elites in the UK, in all the big parties, when they look, for instance, at Nigel Farage, when they look at reform, to be a bit sneery about it, a bit contemptuous,
a bit,
and not to think for themselves. Well, hang on, these are millions of British citizens who are minded to support these ideas. So maybe we better think about that a bit more carefully and take it a bit more seriously. But having said that, just to finish, just on the other hand, I think if you talk about Marine Le Pen, I think the things that you've described are only part of that story. I think that is a racist party.
Why?
I think because if you look at the things that Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella and Jean-Marie Le Pen before, the seam right through that movement ever since it's been.
But hang on, I thought she got rid of her dad.
Well, her dad's not the leader of the party anymore
because she ousted him.
But it's she says and has said many of the same things that he said.
Like what?
So I haven't got quotes memorised.
Well, how do you memorise that they're racist then if you can't remember what they said?
Well, because I remember that they've said racist things. I just haven't memorised the racist things.
So you can remember that they've said racist things, but you can't remember what the racist things they've said are?
Yeah.
Think that's a bit weird?
Not at all. Not at all, no.
OK. What was you going to say, Daniel?
Well, I was going to say this French thing is partly about the far right, but it's also about the far left. I mean, the second biggest group, the second biggest winners in this election that took place yesterday is a motley collection of left-wing parties who are not nice, cosy, sort of social democrat types. They are extreme left-wingers, and they have done very well too. What's happened is, if you like, the centre has collapsed. Now, that centre consists partly of Macron's party, which has sort of gone down to 20%, but also it consists of the traditional old-fashioned Republican, what we would think of as like British Conservatives type party. Admittedly, they did vanish quite a lot some years ago, but the thing is the polarisation as much as the move to the right that's of interest. So I think just looking at through the Le Pen side of the story misses something important. The question you haven't asked, Michelle, which I suppose I'll suggest to you, is how will this have an effect on people going to the polls on Thursday?
In this country?
You sound surprised, like we don't have the TV and the internet here, like Sean said.
What? Do I think that the outcome in France will affect people voting here?
Yes.
I don't think that someone is going to go to the streets and say, do you know what, I was going to vote for Ed Dewberry because I saw his bungee jump, and now because I've seen what happened with Marine Le Pen in France, I'll change my vote. No. But what I do think is reflective, and you see it all the time, there is this notion that if you want the things that I've just described, I won't repeat them, I don't want to send you all to sleep at home, but let's just simplify them and say control of borders. If you want that, the smearing that goes on and the sneering that goes on and the calls of racism, and with all due respect to you, I mean, you're telling me how racist these parties are, and then when I ask you to explain why, you can't remember, but yet you've memorised the label of racism in your mind, but you don't know why that is. And I think this happens to a lot of people.
It's a bit more than that. So I had a French grandfather who lived in a suburb on the edge of Marseille, which is a very, very mixed, big city with an awful lot of social problems and huge immigration. And So I spent a lot of time there. I throughout my life, I've kind of met these people. He was well to the right, my grandfather. He knew a lot of these people. I spent time with these people. I didn't memorise what they said, but I know a racist when I meet one.
But then I just think that this label and this smearing, it is absolutely replicated in this country as well. I'll give you a tiny little example. Today, a newspaper tweeted out a video on Twitter, X, and it was absolutely awful, and it was what I would describe as absolutely unacceptable, vile racism. There was ladies walking down the street that were Muslim. They had, their headscarves on and all the rest of it, and people, whoever was filming this video, was running up and snatching off their headscarf. I mean, absolutely disgusting, horrendous behaviour. I really don't condone that at all. So they tweeted this out, and people all very, very quickly in the comments were saying, this is what Nigel Farage et al. Have created. I wonder what party this person is going to be voting for. Well, actually, when you played the video, what you actually heard was the person that were doing the snatching was a lady speaking in Arabic, saying something about what was going on in Iran and ladies there being forced to wear the headscarf, and here we have a democracy and you don't have to wear it. It was all of that kind of thing. So it absolutely was not the story that had been painted and absolutely echoed within the tweets. And I found that absolutely fascinating. So do I think Marine Le Pen will change voting outcomes on Thursday? No. But I also do think that what's going on there with the smearing of what I would call often very just ordinary people with concerns is being echoed on the streets in Britain. And I, for one, will be personally fascinated to see the outcome of the likes of Reform UK after the election here and see what happens there. And anyway, look, speaking about France and immigration and borders and all the rest of it, after the break, I want to look at the antics in Glastonbury. Did you see it? A so-called Banksy artwork